Have you ever met someone who seems completely unflappable? No matter what life throws at them, a breakup, a betrayal, a massive success, or a devastating loss, their face stays calm, their voice stays steady, and they simply say, "I'm fine." You push a little, and they smile politely and change the subject. You push harder, and suddenly there's a wall. Not anger, not tears, just a quiet, impenetrable wall. These are the people who keep their feelings hidden. And if you're watching this, chances are you either are one of them, or you love someone who is. Either way, you've felt the weight of that silence. You've wondered what's really going on behind the mask. And today, we're going deep into the psychology of why some people bury their emotions so deeply that even they sometimes forget where they put them. Let's start with the most obvious question. Why do they do it? The first major reason is early conditioning. Many emotional hide-and-seek players learned very young that feelings were dangerous. Maybe they grew up in a home where emotions were mocked, "Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about." Maybe tears were met with anger, sadness with dismissal, excitement with sarcasm. In some families, love itself felt conditional on being easy and low maintenance. So the child learns a survival rule. If I show what I really feel, I will be punished, abandoned, or ridiculed. The fastest way to stay safe is to disconnect the outer expression from the inner experience. Over time, this isn't just a habit, it becomes identity. They start to believe, "I'm the strong one. I'm the one who doesn't need anything. I'm the one who holds it together." That belief feels noble. It feels mature. And in many ways, it serves them incredibly well, until it doesn't. The second big driver is temperament. Some people are simply born with a lower emotional expressiveness. Psychologists call this low affect intensity. These individuals don't feel emotions less. Research actually shows they often feel them just as deeply, sometimes deeper, but their physiological arousal is quieter. Their heart rate doesn't spike as dramatically, their face doesn't flush, their voice doesn't shake. Because the external signals are subtle, they learn early that most people won't notice or validate what they're going through, so they stop broadcasting. Then there's the cultural layer. In many East Asian cultures, for example, emotional restraint is a core value. Harmony of the group outweighs individual expression. In certain Western subcultures, think stoic rural communities, military families, or old-school British upbringing, the message is, keep a stiff upper lip. Men, in particular, have been socialized for centuries to see vulnerability as weakness. Even today, studies show boys are comforted less when they cry and are praised more when they tough it out. So we have biology, family, and culture all conspiring to create the perfect emotional vault. But here's where it gets interesting. Hiding feelings isn't the same as not having them. In fact, the research on emotional suppression is brutal. Dr. James Gross at Stanford has spent decades studying what happens when we inhibit emotional expression. His findings: suppression decreases positive emotion experience for everyone, but it doesn't actually decrease negative emotion, it just pushes it underground. The feeling doesn't go away, it just loses its natural exit route. Think of emotions like steam in a pressure cooker. If you clamp the lid down tight, the pressure doesn't disappear, it builds. Over time, that internal pressure shows up as chronic muscle tension, irritable bowel syndrome, hypertension, weakened immune function, even higher rates of heart disease. One landmark study followed men who scored high on emotional suppression for over 20 years. Guess who had significantly higher mortality rates? The suppressors. And it's not just the body that pays. There's a cognitive cost too. When you're busy monitoring and inhibiting your emotional signals, you have less mental bandwidth for memory, problem-solving, and connecting with others. That's why people who chronically hide their feelings often report feeling foggy or detached from their own lives. Now, let's talk about the interpersonal fallout, because this is where it really hurts. People who hide their feelings tend to choose one of two relational strategies: distance or people-pleasing. The distancers pull away the moment intimacy threatens to reveal what's inside. They're masters of "I'm good" and "I don't want to burden you." They cancel plans when they're struggling because the idea of being seen in pain feels worse than loneliness. Over time, their partners feel shut out, confused, even crazy. How can you say everything's fine when I can feel the tension in the room? The people-pleasers take the opposite route. They become hyper-attuned to everyone else's emotions while remaining a complete mystery themselves. They'll listen for hours, fix your problems, bring you soup when you're sick, but if you ask how they are, you get a bright smile and a subject change. Over time, these relationships become painfully lopsided. The pleaser burns out, then resents the very people they've trained to depend on them. Both strategies have the same hidden goal: control. By never letting you see the real emotional weather inside, they ensure you can't hurt them, reject them, or overwhelm them. It's armor. And for a long time, it works. But armor is heavy. And eventually, something has to give. So what happens when the system finally cracks? There are 4 common breaking points. First, the body rebels. Panic attacks, unexplained pain, sudden bursts of rage that feel completely out of character. The emotions that were never allowed a voice find the only language left: physical symptoms. Second, depression sneaks in. When you disconnect from your emotional guidance system for too long, life starts to feel gray and meaningless. You did everything right. You never burdened anyone, you never lost control, so why do you feel so empty? Third, the infamous emotional flood. One day, something relatively small happens: a rude comment, a delayed flight, a song on the radio, and suddenly 20 years of unshed tears come pouring out. The people around them are stunned. Where did this come from? They ask. The answer: everywhere. It's been waiting. And fourth, some never break openly. Instead, they develop what psychologists call alexithymia, literally, no words for emotion. They lose the ability to identify what they feel at all. Asked, "How are you?" they genuinely don't know. Not, "I don't want to say." They can't find the feeling to describe. This is one of the most heartbreaking outcomes, because without access to your own emotions, authentic connection becomes almost impossible. So if you recognize yourself in this, if you're someone who's been carrying this invisible weight, what can you do? The path out is slow, deliberate, and deeply counterintuitive. You have to relearn that feelings are not the enemy. Step 1 is simply noticing. Start a private practice of naming emotions without judging or fixing them. Once a day, pause and ask, "What am I feeling right now?" Not "what should I be feeling," not "what would be convenient," what is actually here? At first, the answer might just be tight chest or numb. That's okay. Bodies often speak before words do. Step 2. Find micro-safe spaces to practice expression. This could be journaling in a password-protected file, talking to a pet, sending voice notes to yourself that you immediately delete, or working with a therapist who understands emotional suppression. The key is that the space must feel 100% safe, no risk of judgment, advice, or abandonment. Step 3. Start with the body, not the story. Suppressed people often get stuck trying to figure out why they feel what they feel. But the nervous system doesn't care about insight, it cares about co-regulation. Try things that discharge stored emotion physically: screaming in the car with music blaring, crying in the shower, vigorous exercise, trembling on purpose. Yes, this is an actual technique called TRE, tension and trauma releasing exercises. Step 4. Practice tiny disclosures with safe people. The goal is not to dump everything at once. That usually backfires. Instead, try what therapist Lori Gottlieb calls 1 inch of vulnerability. Instead of "I'm fine," try "I'm having a rough day." Instead of changing the subject when someone asks how you are, try "I'm not sure how to talk about it yet, but it's been heavy." Watch what happens. Most of the time, the world does not end. In fact, people often lean in. And here's the part that surprises almost everyone. When you start letting safe people see you, really see you, the loneliness begins to lift. Not because they fix anything, but because you're no longer carrying the weight alone. If you love someone who hides their feelings, your path is different but equally important. First, stop trying to pry them open. That almost always strengthens the armor. Instead, become a safe container. When they give you the obligatory "I'm fine," try responding with gentle curiosity instead of pressure. "Okay. I'm here if that changes." Then, and this is crucial, mean it. Don't punish silence with withdrawal or drama. Second, share your own emotions in a non-demanding way. Model what safe vulnerability looks like. "I felt really sad when I heard that news," without adding, "and you should too." Over time, This normalizes emotional expression in the relationship. Third, celebrate tiny openings like they're gold. If they admit to being a little stressed, respond with warmth, not interrogation. The nervous system remembers, when I showed 1 inch of truth, I was met with kindness. That memory is what slowly rewires the old survival rule. And finally, take care of yourself. Loving someone who's emotionally unavailable can be excruciating. Get support so you don't drown in their silence. Here's the truth no one says out loud. People who hide their feelings are some of the deepest feelers on the planet. They're not cold. They're not broken. They're protecting a heart that once learned, often through no fault of anyone in particular, that openness equals danger. Healing isn't about becoming someone who cries at commercials or shares every thought on social media. It's about reclaiming the right to feel without apology. It's about learning that emotions are not a flaw to be managed, but a compass to be trusted. If you're one of these people, know this: the feelings you've been hiding didn't disappear. They've been waiting, patiently, faithfully, for the day when being seen feels safer than staying hidden. And when that day comes, when you let even one person witness what's really going on inside, something extraordinary happens. You realize you're not weak for feeling. You're not a burden for needing. You're not too much. You're human. And that, after all these years of silence, is the most healing thing anyone could ever hear.